Nintendo continues its run of experimental games with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. At what point does something break, though? We'll talk about that and more today on the Backlog Files. Good morning and welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. It is Memorial Day that I'm recording this. Last week we had a new first-party release from Nintendo, and we're going to discuss that. I'm a little conflicted about this. I really enjoyed this game, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. The general concept is there's a book named Mr. E. You, as Yoshi, are going to go into the book and make discoveries about the various things in there. It's an encyclopedia of the various animals and stuff like that live around, Yoshi's Island. And it's an interesting thing that they're doing here. Each level has its own gimmick based on whatever animal you're doing, be it the Crazy Daisy, be it the frog that spits bubbles, be it the plant that plays music when you jump on it, be it, there's one, the cloud you can jump on and you fly around, and if you sound it too long it poofs, but you can jump around. And that's basically what it is. Each level has a gimmick like that, and you got to figure out there's a surfboard thing, and it's each level has its own gimmick. If it sounds familiar, it's because we've been seeing this quite a bit from Nintendo in recent years. We had this with Princess Peach Showtime, which I think did it mostly well, even if the game was a little short. Playing this game, I think what I really liked about it is how well each gimmick worked, and how occasionally the gimmicks would go and just kind of compound on each other, and you would have to use multiple in one level, or really it's the Crazy Daisies, and then the clouds will show up again, or the umbrella bird thing will show up again, and it's just small things like that, where it's like, hey, this thing you learned how to do previously will come here, you'll interact with it, you'll get discoveries, all of that. And it's really interesting how they all kind of work together and create this kind of symbiotic environment, and all of that's really fun. Some of them are a little bit more annoying on the control side. I would say my least favorite level that I played through was either the frog or the umbrella bird, because it took a little bit to get used to how to do it, and it's a weird level curve, difficulty curve, where it's these levels are a lot more difficult than the rest. It's just kind of a little bit odd, and that's kind of where this whole thing kind of lines up. It's this idea of what's the best way to handle this? And that's kind of the interesting, question that we end up with here. I enjoy it. I love the aesthetic. I love the score. All of that's really interesting. And this game is going to be, it's a good first-party game, and I think the other thing that it has going for it is that it's not $79, it is $69, and I believe that it's only $69 if you buy physical. If you buy digital, I think it's $59, which is in that sweet spot. I was talking to someone at work about it last week when I started playing it, and I'm like, part of the issue with it is when you are playing this game, you end up in a situation where it feels very experimental, very, it feels a little short, but there's a depth to it that it does kind of catch up to, and what I wanted to address, we'll address after the break, but what I wanted to address is that this is not Nintendo's first time doing this. We've seen them do this quite a few times in recent years, and the question I have is, at what point do we start to see the next phase of this? And we will talk about that after this. If you want reviews like this every week, follow Beware of Spoilers on Spotify, and check out everything we cover at mwpnews.com. So earlier we talked a little bit about Princess Peach Showtime and how Princess Peach Showtime does kind of reinvent the traditional, game. Each level has its own gimmick, and and each one has something, different you got to do. You're a swordsman, you're a baker, you're a detective, depending on what show you're in. Super Mario Wonder's another one where it's like that game was really easy. Except for the challenge levels. And when you're playing it, it's like, oh, well, each level has a gimmick with the Wonder Flower, and then once you get to that, it's like the game gets, again, really easy from there. And that's, that is what it is. And what I said when I reviewed these games at the time was like, this is a great entry point. This is the place where if someone is a new player, they can onboard relatively easily. They can just be like, hey, well, here we are, and we can we're going to learn how to play this game. We're going to learn how to play a platformer, and that kind of thing is really good. It's like that Disney game that came out a few years ago, Mickey and the Lost Island or Forbidden Island or the Disney Illusion Island. So it was something like that, where it's like, this is an entryway for kids to get into Metroidvanias and teach them the general mechanics of how a Metroidvania works. This is a great game to teach kids how a platformer works because of the fact that it is designed to promote exploration. It's the kind of thing where it's like, look, you're not just getting from point A to point B. In a way, it's kind of redefining what a platformer is. It's not even like a collectathon platformer. It's just, hey, you got to interact with the environment and do something different that way. And it is kind of interesting in that regard. The question I have is, Nintendo's been doing this a lot. And what I like is, and let's just, put this out there too, this does feel like we're back in the GameCube era to an extent, where we're taking these iconic franchises and we're getting a little experimental with them. Metroid Prime going into 3D while keeping the core of a Metroidvania, it going 3D and allowing that to be different. Looking at Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Super Mario Sunshine, these games experimented and tried something new with tried and true franchises, and that is kind of what this feels like. Donkey Kong Bonanza is something entirely different from anything we'd seen before in the franchise. Mario Kart World is opening up the open world and giving that a shot. Pokemon Pokopia was not a first party game. It's, I think technically we call it second party, but or really third party, because Game Freak does release other games, but Game Freak releases, or not Game Freak, it was Koei Tecmo and whatever. They released this game in collaboration with the Pokemon Company, and it's a massive hit because it's Pokemon plus Minecraft plus Viva Pinata, and it's an interesting new approach to this IP. And to an extent, this is kind of that same thing. Without the difficulty, it doesn't have death. I tried to see what would happen, but we really do get these interesting, hey, we're going to try something new, you're going to learn something different, and we're going to see, it's going to give people the opportunity to try out something, and then also onboard young people, onboard new players into this gameplay style. But the issue I have with this is that at a certain point, you can sit here and you can onboard people with these things all day, with these easy games that are fun, innovative, and all of that. But, and how could I forget? I forgot Luigi's Mansion. How can you forget Luigi's Mansion? But the issue is, you fundamentally need, to have a, what's the word I'm looking for here? You need to have something that is going to retain this audience later. You can introduce these elements in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. That's great. But you got to do something with that. You can introduce these things here in Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. That's fine. But you got to put out a more complex platformer. A more complex 2D or 3D platformer. If you're not going to do that, then what are we doing, really? And look, I get that, we don't really know what this year's big end-of-year game is going to be. We know Wind and Waves is next year. That's from Pokemon. We know Star Fox comes out next month. We know There's I feel there's another big game. There's Splatoon in July, and we know these things are happening. And obviously there's another 3D Mario in development. I would be amazed if there wasn't. I would be amazed if there wasn't DLC coming from Mario Kart World. I would be amazed if, we didn't have some kind of Pokemon, third-party game or spin-off. All of that said, there's probably a Smash Brothers coming. Probably another Zelda. There's a rumor that this year's big fall game is Ocarina of Time in Breath of the Wild style. I hope that's true, because I will play the fuck out of that game. But fundamentally, kind of the issue becomes here that I think that we need to not manage expectations, but we do kind of need to be like, what's the next step of this? Where do we go from here? And that is kind of a big question. Where does Mario go? Or in this case, Yoshi go, if we're trying to do this. If it is something where it's like, hey, we're trying to build out what this is, it's like Yoshi, because Yoshi's more kiddie, or in physical appearance. Like, this whole thing takes place in a book. It looks like it's hand-drawn in a children's book. It's a really interesting art style. That's designed to appeal more to kids. And if that's what it's going to be, and this is going to be the entry level there, it's like, hey, this is going to be the onboarding for kids, fine. But why is it that, at some point you do have to release the game that you're building up to? And I'm not saying building up to story-wise, like when we talk about Marvel Studios or when we talk about, even Super Mario Galaxy movie. I'm talking more like building a tolerance for your audience who have been trying this thing, and it's like, okay, great, I learned how to play this. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when the kid who was 5 or 6 when this came out, when they're getting to be, 10, 11, that math doesn't add up, but you get the point I'm trying to make. When that kid is trying to branch out and try something different, you need to have something for them. A kid who back in 2023 played Super Mario Wonder, we're now 3 years removed, is now being given this. It's a very different animal from that, and at the same time, it's not really. Hopefully this leads to a Yoshi's Island full game. And I'm not saying this is an incomplete experience. What I mean is, like, a Yoshi's Island game where you're wandering around with Baby Mario and you gotta keep this little fuck alive, and that kind of thing is gonna be more engaging for the players. And it adds difficulty. And it's not, like, put in lives and make it so that way you can die. Like, that kind of thing would make this, would make this more worth it to me, where it's like, hey, this is something that's designed to be the onboarding. I talk about that a lot across all 4 podcasts. This idea of, like, no hobby is made better by gatekeeping. This idea that, you will constantly need new blood on the consumer side of whatever it is you're doing, be it video games, movies, TV, whatever. You need to bring new people in. And when you have something that lasts as long as, Mario or Yoshi or Pokemon or something like that, you need to onboard people whenever you start again. You need the on-ramp. You need the way for them to be like, hey, so here's what we're doing. And this is how you play this game, and this is how you do it. What it feels like Nintendo's been doing has been kind of taking this approach where it's like, hey, so this is how you play a video game. And in a world where, people my age had the instruction booklet and strategy guides and stuff like that, for the new information age that we're in, where those aren't really a thing anymore, these games where it is designed to be like, hey, so you just gotta, like, learn how to explore, that's kind of a big deal, and that's kind of a worthwhile thing. So all of that said, I would very highly recommend this game, especially if you're someone who's trying to find something to play with your kid. I did enjoy this game. It's fun. It's beautifully done. It runs very well. I would say my biggest disappointment is that there's nothing about this game that inherently screams it needed to run on the Switch 2, which we're only a year into the new hardware cycle, and I feel like that's something that I don't want to say should have prioritized, but like, you're gonna have the new tech, you might want to show that, you know, it's there. Like, there are load screens, but they do a fairly good job of hiding them. But the issue is, like, you know, this is a more powerful console. There was nothing about this game while I was playing that I was like, I needed this new console to play this game. It's one of the things that's nice now that it's out and it's here, and it's like, oh, this is a nice thing to have. But there's nothing about this that necessarily screams I need, like, the Switch 2 was required to play this. The levels are small and self-contained, and you know, there's not a ton going on in each one. Each level you can get through in like 10 minutes. Like, I did the first 2 chapters on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/@MWPNewsGaming, you can see I did the first 2 chapters in, I think, like an hour and a half, and that was with me struggling on 2 levels. With the fucking parasol bird and the O-ring mouth frog. Like, you can see that there was a concerted effort to, you know, to try and mitigate my issues. But considering the whole thing is designed to be like, hey, you got to explore and figure it out, like, that's what this is going to be. This is a game that I could see very interestingly fitting into the speedrunning community. This is a game that I could see being a perennial speedrun favorite. But I digress on all that. I would have liked to have seen the game maybe be a little bit more expansive in each level, maybe have more going on in each level, maybe, you know, because, like, forget the Switch, like, I'm playing it and I'm like, really, I could have seen this running on the DS. Like, there's nothing really about it that is there, because, like, Yoshi's movements and mechanics are so limited here. I don't know. I just feel like there was definitely room for, you know, more on the front of, like, what we can do with this IP. But like I said, we will wrap up there for today. Next week we'll have another new game or an old game or something to talk about. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week. Before you go, I also write fiction. My newest novel, Succession Planning, is out on August 28th, available both in paperback and an ebook. It follows a journalism grad stuck managing a store while the owners wage a quiet war over who takes over the business. It's about ambition, inertia, and taking the easiest choice. The link is in the description. That's Succession Planning, out on August 28th.